I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Well, Wednesdays we talk about business, about entrepreneurship. And today we're moving in that vein with this discussion with two organizations that are focused on encouraging, supporting, growing entrepreneurship in our communities of color in general, Black communities in particular. Before I bring my guests in, though, I want to thank you who have joined us and will be joining us through any of the platforms that we are streaming to. We're streaming live to YouTube for the Black Press of America and YouTube for Insight News. We're streaming live to Twitter and to Facebook and to LinkedIn. So if you're connecting on any of those platforms, we want to acknowledge you. We want to thank you because your participation, your engagement is critical, it's important, and we're happy that you're here. We also want to invite you to continue to support the growth of the conversation with Al McFarlane. How can you do that? Well, become a subscriber. Just wherever you are, take a second, mosey over to the YouTube Insight News MN and subscribe, like and share. And on all the platforms, you can communicate. There's the comment section. Shout us out, shout your own self and your state, your community out. If you have questions, concerns, put those in the comment section. We'll acknowledge you and acknowledge your question and share those with our guests. Finally, we want to thank you that helped us get to our initial goal of 1,000 subscribers. We set new goals now. The new goal is 2,000, of course. And we want to thank the several hundred, over, 10, 11,000 people jumped in to monitor our important discussion on reparations. Because we got such a terrific response on that, we're going to schedule several more conversations on the question of reparations for slavery. And our focus is going to be not only slavery in the United States, but slavery in the hemisphere, slavery globally. And the objective is to shed light, to create discussion, and to have our communities and our countries be earnestly about the business of repairing the damage that flowed from the transatlantic slave trade and other slave systems, and the consequence, the legacy of those horrific experiences. And how do we heal? How do we come to emerging globally, not blaming each other, but discovering our strength and our ability to become our best selves? It's doable, I believe that, and but we have to face the truth and discuss it, lay it out. It's like Mandela said, truth and reconciliation, path to freedom. Well, today I want to introduce Angel Even and Elisa Pujar. Angel leads an organization called Led by Truth, and they've got a special mission of bringing young people into their entrepreneurial, not young people, but people into their entrepreneurial space, helping people discover what it is to be an entrepreneur, what pathways, what resources, what challenges, what internal and external factors there are that will support or hinder a person's entrepreneurial zeal. Pleased to talk about organization Led by Truth. And also joining us is Elisa Pujar, who is the Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer at Neighborhood Development Center in St. Paul. And I look at this as a spectrum type program because Angel is working with people on a one-on-one basis and who are in some cases starting off at a micro entrepreneurial pace or station and are developing into their business. And Alicia is working on more established businesses that are trying to change levels and grow to their next level. I think Alicia and NDC are managing over $70 million of grant and loan money for entrepreneurs. So it's a big opportunity here. And this is a great spectrum. First of all, and Angel, both of you, welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you here. Let me have you both do the elevator speech. I'll start with you, Angel. Talk about what Led by Truth is, what the vision is. Take 2 or 3 minutes and just introduce it. And then I'll do the same thing with Alicia. Then we have questions and comments from me, and others may join us online as well. Angel?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Angel Eben. I'm the CEO and founder of Led by Truth. And I always tell people I decided to launch it a little bit out of frustration. I'd spent previously over 14 years in the nonprofit world, primarily providing coaching and executive coaching support and consulting in healthcare. But I love growing people and was really burnt out. So I was able to sit down and figure out, well, how can I leverage my skills and pour it into a different type of venture, a different type of profession. And that's how Led by Truth was formed. But with the goal in mind to provide a mentorship that reflects those that we're supporting. So our biggest thing is amplifying representation within mentorship and within entrepreneurship. So we provide a few different programmings. One is our flagship program, which is the Blue Mentorship Program. It's 12 months long. Really, we pour our whole selves into the founders. They get connected with a coach for the whole 12 months. They get connected with local business owners of color as mentors to have a safe space to kind of catch them when life just happens and business challenges emerge. But we also bring in other expert advisors from marketing, support, accounting, legal, also individuals of color to just create a wraparound, robust melanated support for these founders. Our other programs are more so bite size with our sprouting series, which can be engaged digitally or through a group coaching series that is about developing out a business plan. A lot of people don't know where to start when they just have this idea and this vision and are wanting to jump in with both their feet, but are hanging by a thin thread, trying to figure out like where do I go. So this series walks them through the process of developing out a business plan, but also getting into the right mindset to really think more logistically and about the sustainability of their business. Some founders realize it might not be for me, but going through that process helps them get there. And then our Flourish series is around strategic planning, also digital experience, self-guided pace for founders. But absolutely love this work. We've been fortunate enough to support a little bit over 80 founders since we launched in June of 2021. And we're like nearing our 3-year mark this June, which I'm really excited for.
Awesome, awesome. And before you started this work, you said you were doing counseling and coaching. Tell me about what you did that led you to this work.
Yeah, I was, so I had spent a little over 14 years in healthcare, started more clinically, and then I just fell in love with operations, but also just working with teams. So I started
What were you doing in healthcare? What was your work in healthcare?
Yeah, when I first started, I was a surgical first assistant. So very much like hands-on clinical role, helping with tissue dissection, skin closure, all that fun stuff. And then transitioned, ended up getting my master's in healthcare administration and transitioned to informal process improvement work during my time at Mayo, and then ended up loving it. Fell in love with process improvement and coaching and started doing it a little bit more formally with some of my roles at Allina Healthcare as well as Fairview, providing executive coaching, working on large system initiatives for both of those health systems.
So do you see your business growing from working with startups and thinking about entrepreneurs into working with more seasoned entrepreneurs down the road? What's the growth plan or the business track that you have carved out for yourself and your company, Led by Truth? And why the name, Led by Truth? That's an interesting name. It's an unusual name for business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll start with the name, only because I've had a few, well, I'd say when the idea of Led by Truth came to me, I'll be honest with you, I was like in bed. It was right before my partner and I bought our house, but I was in bed staring at these Post-its, and I'd spent some time during the summer of 2020 really thinking about like, what is my next step? Is there a growth path for me in healthcare still? or is there something else? And I had met with an amazing career coach and business coach through LinkedIn, actually. And he was, during the pandemic, was giving free consultation services to people. So I'm like, never had a coach before. Been someone else's coach, never had one. Let me try this. And he recommended me to sit down and write down on Post-its the things that I love, the things that I'm passionate about, my skills, and then like narrow it down to see like what could be feasible and turn it into a business that I would enjoy to do. And when I did that, I was looking at my Post-it. He said to come up with like 70. I came up with 7. 70 was a lot. But I was looking at the Post-it that said growing people. And that was my favorite thing about executive coaching. You're growing that individual, if they are an executive or frontline manager or frontline team member, they're leaders either way. And in my head, I was like, I just want to find my own path and economic freedom and help other people do the same. And so with Led by Truth, it's helping others lead their own path to whatever that truth is for them. So that's the purpose and meaning behind the name. But for how I see Led by Truth growing, we've been having a lot of these discussions, which I'm sure you also have at NDC with where do we fit in the ecosystem? There's a lot of big focus right now on high innovative tech and the next unicorn. And I think before a business becomes a unicorn, $1 million, billion brand, they need that nourishment at the beginning stages. And that's really where I see Led by Truth continuing to grow our impact on supporting early stage founders and even a little bit mid-stage founders as they're thinking now differently about their strategy and long-term goals, and being a safe landing place for them at that point in their journey until they're ready to level up and connect with other organizations like NDC or others in the community to continue to grow their understanding of their business.
So you sort of picked out a segment or a bandwidth inside the ecosphere. And as you see it right now, your mission is to help people go from ideation to reality and to challenge and encourage to grow their capacity to operate in the space. And you see that one of the outcomes would be them also moving on to engage other resources like NDC, like NEDA, like the chamber or other organizations that are supporting businesses. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Absolutely. It's we can't be everything and all the things. And so I think like collaboration and partnership is so essential to this work. It's essential for how Led by Truth has grown. And I want to be really good at the solid core things that Led by Truth has formulated, and then partner and support other organizations as they're now like carrying that torch with the founders that we started out with. So that's definitely where I see Led by Truth continuing to grow our impact in.
So how do you find money to support some of the people that you've worked with? You told me before the show that you've provided X amount of either startup or working capital or small grants. Tell me how that works and how did you find the money to do that?
Yeah, well, great question. So I, to be honest, I usually encourage most folks not to actually launch a nonprofit, especially if you are a person of color. It is the funding is not like that. Especially for the work that we're doing in the entrepreneur space. So I had always thought about Led by Truth as like, how do I make sure that we are sustainable? And so grant funding, cherry on top, but where we've kind of landed is actually through cultivating relationships with local government. So we have a contract with Hennepin County with their Elevate Hennepin program and can provide no cost support for founders and emerging entrepreneurs within Hennepin County. And they'll be able to access our programming like the Sprouting Series and developing out a business plan. We also have been partnered actually since like 3 months after we launched Led by Truth with ACER, so African Career Education and Resource Inc., who love Nalima, love Denise. They are a powerhouse, them and their entire team. And that's been wonderful. We're looking to continue to expand our reach because, again, the stages of founders that I'm working with are in the stage where they also have a job, or if not 1 or 2 or 3, and trying to grow their business. Right. And so financially, money is tight. They, of course, see a value in business coaching support, but where they would rather put their money in is probably on shinier things like social media and others. And so we're trying to find innovative ways to meet individuals where they're at financially so they can access our programming. So one of the this year's program enhancements is a digital self-paced, self-guided experience where in case of business is outside of my kind of the area where my contracts do cover and provide no cost support, they'd be able to hopefully be able to enroll and access our resources at a very minimal rate.
Awesome, awesome. I've never met an Even before. Tell me about your name. I'm
Well,
curious.
man, Al, you are throwing out some great questions. I wish I could tell you more backstory. So which I love my family, but I was adopted when I was little. And so I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then my adoptive parents came down, picked me up, and brought me to Minnesota. And I'm still wondering why I'm here, but I am. And so the one thing I do know, I remember talking to my adoptive dad about this as to like, yeah, what was the origination? Because everyone wants to say Evan or Evans, but I want to say Norwegian. But when one of his cousins like dated that back, and when family came over, immigrated over to the U.S. back in the day, there was a documentation that actually looked like the V and even was a U, but it was transferred over into a V. So I think my name is technically supposed to be Ewan, but now it's
so. Somewhere things changed along the way. That's interesting. Well, names are important. I'm going to come back and ask you more about your Norwegian heritage.
I know. Trust me. I don't know if I have answers for you, but
well, just entertain the question will be of value. Let me bring in Alicia Pluhar in. Alicia, welcome to the conversation. And this is really a rich conversation because, as I said, it sort of brings our viewers and listeners across the spectrum of thinking about being in business. And as you mentioned, Angel, I'm picturing this as you were saying it, working with the entrepreneurs who have 1, 2, 3 jobs plus the business. I go by it must have been a Saturday Night Live or Eddie Murphy joke about Jamaicans. I'm a Jamaican, right? And Jamaicans are known for having 5 jobs, right? I do surgery in the morning, and I do pick up work in the afternoon, and in between I go to school and run a restaurant. So I get that when people are wanting to be entrepreneurs and are kind of all over the place trying to make ends meet and also bring an idea forward. Elisha, you work with people who've come through that same experience of wanting to be, wanting to do, needing to be, and needing to do something different, and whose visions suggest that they have an idea that is going to find favor in the marketplace, hopefully. Talk about, if you would, the work of NDC, Neighborhood Development Center.
Sure. And first of all, just thank you so much, Al, for inviting NDC to the table for this conversation. Angel, I just want to co-sign everything you just said, because our worlds are very, very similar in what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do in community. NDC has actually been around for 31 years, I think it's official. And we didn't start where we were at, right? We started as very much a grassroots on the ground, working in churches, really to support the immigrant community coming into business ownership. And over the years, we started lending and adding things to our programming. We are now a community development financial institution, a CDFI. And so that's where we are today. We have 4 core pillars to what we do and how we work with entrepreneurs. The first pillar is training. Like Angel said, often folks just don't have that business plan in place, or they haven't been given the opportunity to even take the time. And we know that in BIPOC communities, that is really challenging to actually be able to take care of yourself. And part of that self-care is taking the time to actually work on the things you really want to work on to achieve that goal. From there, we have our small business lending, which is our second pillar. And what we do is we do something we call high-risk character-based lending. You'll hear that maybe a lot in the ecosystem. We probably should get a little more creative about how we talk about it, but really what it is looking at people who cannot go to a bank to get a business loan, and looking at what their business is, what the opportunities are, what level of funding and capital infusion they're going to need. And then we look at all kinds of other indicators. So we're not just looking at a credit score. We're looking at, does this have the potential to create jobs? Does this have the potential to be a great space in community because it's a coffee shop? There's kinds of all different indicators that we use when we're underwriting to do what is considered high risk lending. Our third pillar is our technical assistance or business services. And really that's the wraparound support to help folks along the way. So often in business ownership, you're really knowledgeable about the passion part of it, right? Like you're really knowledgeable about the recipes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty reasonable. You may not be knowledgeable about how to build a website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or how do you actually set up your books? That's a really challenging, daunting thing for folks. And so that's really where our team comes in and provides that wraparound support and education of here's how to set up your books. Here's how to get a website started, or maybe you need branding, maybe you need basic strategic planning for the first 2 years of your business. Those are the kinds of supports that we can provide. And then our fourth pillar that makes us a little unique in the ecosystem is we do real estate incubation. And so we actually have 5 real estate incubators between Minneapolis and St. Paul. And our model behind that really is long-term affordable commercial real estate. Often, and this is an interesting time if you're following the news around what's happening with commercial real estate, oftentimes the folks that we're working with are just naturally priced out. And or they're going into places that now are fighting gentrification. And so they're going to get priced out. And so how do we actually hold down space and community to say, no, this is long-term affordable commercial real estate? So we say incubator, but you don't have to move out. If you do, that's great. And we celebrate it and we get to bring another business in. That's like a wonderful thing. But really, that's what we're trying to achieve with our real estate programming. At the end of the day, all of this comes together. And really what we're doing is we're looking at racial and economic equity through the lens of entrepreneurship. And what does that actually look like? What is that the intergenerational wealth that can be built? How does entrepreneurship have a play in that for people? We, as a society, often ask BIPOC businesses to, you hear the term all the time, bootstrap. National research shows that Black businesses are the most likely to open completely underfunded. What they should be at when they open. And so that's really kind of our at the end of the day, our focus, and what we're trying to test and prove out is, in fact, that entrepreneurship can be used as a tool on a pathway towards wealth building.
Is there a sense of why that statistic exists? Why is it that Black businesses generally are completely and consistently underfunded?
They're the least likely to be able to access traditional bank capital. And in some communities across the country, that's your only other option. We're actually a little fortunate here in that having an ecosystem of CDFIs. So there's a little more opportunity then to get lending through a CDFI or even a CDC, a community development corporation. So that is the biggest challenge is how do you get people through the traditional banking?
Yes. And the reason I ask is to find out where the problem is. Is it in the unworthiness or unreadiness of the entrepreneur, or is there something that's external to them that doesn't provide or either blocks opportunity that others may experience? And I think it's the second, not the first, that
I would agree.
The experience of African people, those who have come out of slavery, for example, over and over again have demonstrated the ability to organize, to do collaborative work, to do the entrepreneurial work, to save money, to amass capital and grow. But each time there have been significant movements, there's also been a pushback that can only be described as racial, right? And white nationalists, where Black communities on a wholesale basis were destroyed, burned out, bombed out. And if it wasn't through the viciousness of overt racism, public policy did the rest. Meaning, oh, let's build a freeway here called I-94 and wipe out Rondo, right? Wipe out the near north side. And so that policy happened around the country, happens still. And what's wonderful now is that organizations like yours, Alicia, are pushing the envelope and identifying racial equity as an objective in light of what has happened. And you're calling the country to face the truth of where we have failed people that have not failed us, right?
Yep. And we really, I mean, we prioritize where we do our work, and it is long-term disinvested communities. And what goes right alongside that? It is systemic racism. It is exactly what you just said. It is policy, it is history. When communities have actually amassed an amount of wealth, there are forces at play that come in to take that away, as we saw with historic Rondo and Frogtown, as we saw 94 on the Minneapolis side, literally splitting up parts of North Minneapolis. And you're right, it happens all over the country and continues to this day. It's actually happening in Houston right now, not surprisingly, but their massive freeway system built out is doing exactly what it is designed to do, unfortunately. And so that's why I am sitting on the corner of University and Dale, literally right now. That is where we put down our roots in very specific areas of that long-term disinvestment, so that we're rooted in the community. I can walk out the door right now and I am rooted in that history and that community. And I am rooted in all the small business owners that keep it going, keep it alive, have amazing food. Sorry, I love food. And so, yes, you are right. Like, how do we stand in the space of a very traumatic history, sit in the discomfort that we may not, probably in our lifetime, we will not get to see certain things, but do what we can while we're here and be okay with that's how we spent our time, and it'll keep going.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Wednesdays, we have on our live stream a conversation about economic development, about business, about entrepreneurship. And today we're doing that with Alicia Pluhar, who's the Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer at Neighborhood Development Center in DC, and with Angel Even, who's a CEO and founder of Led by Truth, both organizations helping people discover their entrepreneurial visions, dreams, work, and path to success. Let me make a note to any who might be joining us on any of the social media platforms. If you are in business or have been in business or know people who are in business who raise business questions, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a note with a question or a comment, observation in the chat, and we will share that in the I guess it's called the chat. Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you in the comment section. Let us know of your thoughts or feelings. So you mentioned, Alicia, that you have 5 sites in the Twin Cities. Tell me about that, and talk about real estate, why that's important, and why this solution emerged as one of the strategies, the pillars that you use to build your work around.
Yeah, it's a great question. So most people will know our most famous incubator, which is the Midtown Global Market. A lot of folks don't know the Midtown Global Market is, in fact, a small business incubator. And so the entrepreneurs that are in Midtown Global Market, they've been through our training, our workshops. Most of them we did a loan with for them to start up their business. And obviously the focus in that market is celebrating the diversity of people that live in our communities and really celebrating that diversity. And so it's a really special, unique place.
It's also a big deal. It's a big deal. So take a minute and talk about what it was before and what has emerged and what the potentials are for that, and then talk about the other centers as well.
Yeah, it's another interesting story of disinvestment. It is the Midtown Global Market is in the historic old Sears building at Lake in Chicago, which for a long time, Lake in Chicago actually was a very thriving, place of Black business ownership. Um, Sears is there as well. They were in community, they were there for so long that I think nobody thought anything would be different. And then when Sears left, you have a massive footprint, literally from like a square footage perspective, and it just sat. And so one of the things that we need to always be aware of is that when we make decisions in community about letting something sit empty, we send a message to community. And what the message is, you are not valued. You don't deserve something in this space. It's fine. You can live with this boarded up building, right? And that wasn't the message that at the time Mayor R.T. Rybeck wanted to send. And so there was a very collaborative effort across multiple sectors, including nonprofit as well as Alina from the health system, and then Ryan Companies, and then the housing in there, Sherman as well. So it was a very highly collaborative, public-private, everything project for the entire project. And it's now created this really lovely, vibrant area that had been abandoned for a long time. I was growing up during that time, and I remember very clearly that you would not, off of 35W, you would not take the Lake and 31st exit because it was considered too dangerous. I mean, that was the perception. And some of that perception was correct, right? When you send message to community, that's what's going to happen. So there was lots of prostitution and drug use and, just a disinvested community, right? There's desperation there. And so that's what happens. And we actually know that the Midtown Global Market opening at the time reduced crime by 25%. On that street, that was 17 years ago now, but and we're still dealing with what's happening in the world. We're not immune from what is happening in the world, and yet it is a really unique experience. The cultural events, the programming we do there is unlike anything I've ever seen. We always do it in partnership with community groups. It's really beautiful.
We used to do this program live from there as well.
That's
for
right.
about a year. So it was really fun to be in the atrium, the open area there with a live band and a live guest and live broadcast and television programming through SPNN in St. Paul.
Yes.
So we loved the experience and the value and the beauty and the excitement.
Yeah.
It's a good place to bring people. And if you want to give them an immersion into the cultural diversity of our city, that's one of the places to do it. Where else have you got sites for
Sure.
entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so the rest of our sites are across the river in St. Paul. So the building I'm sitting in right now is called Frogtown Crossroads. And we have 5 retail incubator spaces on the first floor of this building. All but one space is leased, and all spaces are currently leased to Black-owned businesses. This was something that we knew from the very first day of even creating this idea of like, could we do a brand new development on this? This theory was like, how do we really double down on honoring the past of this being a historic Black community? And so we're just really we're proud that we're doing it. We're doing the work, but honestly, like, it's those entrepreneurs. Like, we can't take credit. They're incredible. They're incredible entrepreneurs. They are creative. They are resourceful. They're so inspiring. I get to walk down every day and just be like, oh, this is amazing. Like, look at what you can do in community. One of those businesses is Flava Cafe, owned by Shawnee Grigsby. And I will never forget the day that she opened and I walked down there. And her and I just had like tears in our eyes. And I said, Shawnee, do you realize you just transformed a corner overnight?
Wow.
That's about more than just being a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's like
Mm-hmm.
the value and the power of entrepreneurship. Yes, you want to run a successful business. Yes, you need to make money. And there's
Mm-hmm.
so much that it contributes to in community. Right next door to us is Frogtown Square. We have too many Frogtown names, which has about 7 retail businesses as well, including a Los Ocampo restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And we have actually worked with that family since they opened their very first restaurant. And they now have about 7 locations. Very,
And
very
they're over in the Midtown global market as well. They're
yes,
famous and
yes,
very good. Yeah.
yes. And then right behind us, we have a building that's actually an office building. So it's not retail focused,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a place where if your business needs to be able to rent office space, you need to be able to take meetings or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We've got that available. And then on the east side of St. Paul, in partnership with Dayton's Bluff Neighborhood Housing Services, we took up the old Animal Ark building. If people are familiar with that, it's at 809 East 7th. It had sat empty for a long time as well. And so together in partnership with Dayton's Bluff, we wanted to spruce it up, provide some business opportunities as well. And so we've got businesses in there, and I'm super excited. This is kind of new news. We are actually partnering with Metro State to build out a cybersecurity
Ah.
center in that space. And part of the partnership is going to be supporting small business owners in their
Mhm.
own cybersecurity protection. So we know, again, research shows it's small businesses are overwhelmingly targeted
Mhm.
for things like cybersecurity attacks and are the least likely to be resourced to actually do something about it. So that's going to be part of the partnership with Metro State, is really supporting the small business community with exactly what the hospital systems get, or Amazon has
Mhm.
available, and really making sure they have those same opportunities. I'll stop there, Al.
Well, your big news, Alicia, is that the last legislative session under the leadership, I think, of Bobby Joe Champion in the Senate and others in the House, a phenomenal class of leaders from communities of color went to emerged in the legislature as a bloc that was clear on supporting economic benefit for communities that have historically been at the margin or second thought. And you guys, they were able to come up with probably $150 million of new money to go into supporting businesses owned by people of color. I think your organization ended up with around 70 million. And I think your sister organization in Minneapolis, META, around the same or close to it. Tell me about that. What does that mean? What happened? How did it happen? What happened? And what does it mean? And what are you going to do?
And do you want to know that when Bobby Joe Champion called and floated this idea, we all went out of fear?
I can imagine. Yeah.
Um, no, it's actually it's an amazing story. Yes, under Senator Bobby Joe Champion's leadership and the leadership of Representative Hodan Hassan, they knew there was, yes, a lot of money had gone out to mitigate COVID and the unrest following the murder of George Floyd, but at the end of the day, there were still so many people left behind,
Hmm.
and we know what happens.
Hmm.
Those are our Black and Brown communities, and so yeah, they found some money. They looked under the couch cushions. And so we will be deploying 72 million in grants to small businesses.
Mm.
META is deploying 22 million in loans to small businesses. The programs have a lot of nuances to them. So I just encourage everybody, go to the mnpromiseact.org website, because I won't be able to cover all the nuances and details here. But it is an amazing opportunity to provide some additional support to help these businesses stabilize or actually utilize this opportunity to do what they want to do next with their business growth. And so META actually closed their first loan just this week on Monday. And their first loan was to help an entrepreneur buy a building that is going to be like a mental health care facility for people in the community. So right there, that's an amazing, beautiful thing. And that's the terms of the loan are great. They're up to 10 years. It's a 3% interest. So it's a really great opportunity. It's limited, right? In the sense that you can only use it for real estate. So I just want to put the caveat on that because people get real excited when you hear 3%. And then on the grant side of things, which NDC is deploying, grants are based on your average annual revenue. And that's based on 2 years. So 2021 and 2022, or 2022 and 2023, if you just happen to have your 23 taxes already done. Your revenue has to be under $750,000. Again, Bobby Joe was really focused on how do we get at these businesses that just got left behind. And they're lower on the revenue line, right? So if your revenue is 100,000 and under, it's a grant of up to $10,000. If you're between that and 350, it's a grant of up to $25,000. And then from there to the 750 max, you can get up to a $50,000 grant.
Okay, great. How many takers so far? Are you starting to put the money out yet or not? Or working on it?
We are not. We have been spending quite a bit of time actually building the program. We build the program in partnership with our legislative officials, in partnership with DEED, who is administering this, to really ensure we understand legislative intent and to build the program the way that it needs to be built. Part of it is we're building an entire technology platform to actually take in grant applications and disperse them. And as you can imagine, NDC is not a tech company. And so we're heavy in building. The other reason why we haven't quite launched yet is we want it to be really rooted in community. And so we started, it was actually community outreach that we started first, which is like, let's make sure community even knows this program is out there first, right? Do you know this is coming? Then do you know what you're going to need to have ready to apply? We're doing this unlike any other program that's ever been done at the state, which is we're providing deep technical assistance prior to the application opening. So we're out in community, we're doing information sessions, we're doing all kinds of coaching. We're working with community partners in community. We cannot do this alone. I mean, Angel, you get it. Like the ecosystem, like we have to like bring partners on to also help us, get the word out, get the educational pieces out. We are also not opening the application for 10 days and closing it. And if you didn't have your stuff together in time, you're just left out. We're taking a very different approach, which is you can actually ask for help along the way if you get into the application and you realize, oh, I actually don't have that thing. There's a button you're going to be able to click and then we'll provide you with some technical assistance. And so again, it's just a different way of doing things, but we felt really strongly that this is the right way to do things. But it does mean it's a slower process. And so I am really excited to say that we recently did some external testing and the platform was working great. So like it is so close.
Okay, cool.
So close. And thank everybody for their patience.
So are you working with businesses only or nonprofits as well?
Yep. So the Promise Act program does have a provision for nonprofits. It's similar in its revenue of 750 and under. And then the caveat is that the nonprofit has some earned revenue that is earned similar to a business. And we are partnering with Propel Nonprofits to actually finalize that piece of what that's gonna look like. And then Propel will actually help do the grant reviewals for those nonprofit applications. So yes, it is available to nonprofits.
Okay. Angel, let me ask you to jump back in here. Just in your experience as a coach and a leader, what kinds of, and talking to the people that you've helped, the 80 or so that you've worked with so far, what are their key challenges? What advice do you find yourself giving, particularly to individuals of color who are entering the entrepreneur ecosystem? What's the common thread in terms of challenges for them?
Well, I have a few that are like fresh in my brain only because I had a group session with some founders this morning. But I'd say the biggest thing is it is definitely the how do I make this work with very limited resources at my fingertips? And I think that can be really discouraging for business owners of I have this vision, I know my proof of concept works, but this like pace of scale is like burning them out.
Yeah.
And so I think individuals burnout is huge. When Elisa, when you were chatting around the new mental health clinic that is being built, which is amazing and needed, and we're in like a crisis here in Minnesota, just there's not enough resources right now for folks. But I think that is some of the biggest things. So I spent a lot of my coaching sessions, of course, on the key deliverables on like, here's how you start to understand what your profit margins are. But I also have to interweave a little bit of why are you scared to like move forward on that piece? This is holding you up. We spent time developing out a script for a sales approach, but you're still not acting on it. What's going on? And it's like helping individuals get over that fear of putting themselves out there and not knowing if it's going to work. And not everyone has that mindset of really thinking and breaking things down and testing and evaluating. So I usually see individuals either as like really big visionaries, but they struggle with the processes, or strong operational leaders, but they struggle with the piece on like, how do you attach that to your vision? And then now where are you going? And they're so stuck in the weeds that they can't see clearer that all they're doing is a lot of work, but it's not paying off right now. And they need to shift their focus. And so it's always interesting when I meet individuals, and actually one today had said, I don't know what I'm doing. This is why I'm in this program. and as we were talking, I said, there's probably a part of that that's true, but the other part too is like, you just told me some steps that you're taking and what your hoping outcomes are, and here's your next steps. Like, that is strategy. In our minds, we were thinking it's this big, massive, beautiful thing that has a bow around it. But honestly, a lot of the time I'm pulling out information because it's already inside that individual that I'm coaching.
Are there some unspoken racial disparities in both government and philanthropic arenas that contribute to the difficulty that people of color in general, Black people in particular, have had entering the business or entrepreneurial space? And you've talked about this already, Elisa, but I wanted both of you to go back over this again, just sort of painting a picture of the landscape out of which we are attempting to create corrections, modifications, pathways to sustainable and profitable business creation in Black and other communities of color. What are the external factors that work against that we all have to fight together to change in order for our communities and our lives to flourish in the entrepreneurial sense? Maybe first Angel and then Elisa.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying the one statistic that always is in my head that maybe it keeps me up at night, maybe it's also a motivating factor, is especially when it comes to like Black women in business ownership, only 3% mature past to 5 years. Like, when you sit down and look at 3%, So to me, like, evaluating, well, why is that? And it's businesses that have strong followings, that have strong foundations, but aren't able to be sustaining. And one thing that I do hear and see, and I've experienced this as well as a Black woman founder in the nonprofit industry, is our business is delegitimized. And sometimes to our face, sometimes behind our backs. But the types of questions we get is very different from some of our peers. I was on a call not that long ago, I want to say last month, with about a contract opportunity that I was reached out to first by them. And one of the first questions that this individual had mentioned to me was, "Oh, but you don't have experience running a business." And I'm sitting there saying, what have I been doing? What have I been doing this entire time? But that is really what we're up against. It's this constant battle. I've had conversations with even foundations, like why I encourage people not to get into the nonprofit world, especially if you're a individual of color, is the expectation for you to just be grateful, to apply for a grant and maybe not receive it and just keep applying is really frustrating. And I remember having a conversation with a foundation on they called out my business model being not as traditional as a nonprofit, because I have a lot of different contracts and other earned revenue, because I don't get grant funding like that. And I mentioned that to them. I said, well, you're not funding me, so I have to figure out a way. But I don't think some of my amazing like white peers and collaborators, and also ecosystem disruptors, they wouldn't be receiving those types of questions. So I do think it's some of these unconscious biases that bleed in from entrepreneurs trying to get funding from lenders. And even though they're looking, objectively at the revenue targets and the expenses, there is still this bias that feeds in. Well, it's an oversaturated industry. Everything's an oversaturated industry.
Right.
But that gets thrown out, especially when it comes to the beauty and health and wellness. Well, why would individuals of color pour into and focus on starting up a business in that industry? We need it, right? So we usually start businesses from a place of passion, a place of loss, a place of, I didn't receive the support, I want others to win. So let me bring this forward. But it's almost as like a double-edged sword sometimes. I don't know if you see that too, Elisa, in what you're experiencing.
Well, before Elisa answers, let me both an example you can use that I've used often, and it kind of proves your point. I sell advertising for a living. I go to companies and say I own Insight News and reach 100,000 people every week and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And when I started early on, we were reaching a smaller number of people, but we were still the largest Black circulation newspaper in the marketplace. And I'd knock on a corporate door, Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, my name is, and here's what I do, will you buy an ad? And the response I got, this is an oversimplification, is like what you're doing, but we gave in church on Sunday. So they viewed our business as charity, as not the main thing. And I was wasting their time because they had real business to do. And real business in their mind was the macro market, mass media. And that's before we all saw the mass dissipate into the illusion that it was. And now the emergence of the niche marketing puts us at the center and at the point of the spear, and we own the niche. And so we are still struggling to get corporations to say, if you thought that micro entrepreneurship, or what's called hyper local engagement, is one of the new strategies. That's where we started off from the beginning. Is hyper local. Elisha, go ahead.
Yeah, I love this question. I love it from the aspect of, I think this is where we have opportunity to really push narratives and push a needle. I don't love it from the aspect of, it is the reality that most of our philanthropic institutions are still very much white-led. We need to also understand the history that all of philanthropy in the United States was created under white supremacism, period. So if you look at where like the first foundations were built and where that money comes from, all of that. So you cannot deny that that is in fact the history. And those institutions can be very large and very slow or unwilling to move. I've witnessed this firsthand. Renee Dossman, who is our president and CEO, I have seen funders engage with her in a way I never saw them engage with our founder, who was a white man. And so this is a very real thing. If I can use my privilege anywhere as a white woman, it is that I will speak that truth to funders and philanthropy. I can take that risk as a white woman. So let's be very clear about why that is and have some good.
What happens when you do? Have you got stories to tell about challenging the?
Yeah. So we had a funder who had never asked us for a report for 20 years. There would be a meeting with our founder with a good old boy pat on the back, and we would get our grant. We bring our new president and CEO on, and with one grant, they required us to submit to them 3 reports for a single grant when we had never been asked for anything before. I was deeply uncomfortable with it because I knew what was going on, and it got to a point where it was in a meeting, both Renee and I were there, and I said, I need you to understand, whether this is what's happening or not, that this looks incredibly racist. They're not funding us anymore.
Okay.
That's okay.
Wow.
Not all money is good money. Not all money is good money. And honestly, we don't want that money. Now, I have to say, and where I feel really hopeful is so many of those times I have brought up things like the power dynamic and all of that. Most funders are willing to listen. That brings me hope. But I need them to listen to Angel's point. They need to listen to the actual people living that experience. You need to be willing to listen to an Angel as much as you're willing to listen to an Elisa.
Do our people, what's our people's story? I think that we always, all of us would agree that we have a kind of bilingual or duality that we operate in. We operate, I've used the term, I've learned the term, there's a governance structure, which means that's who we are and what we are to each other, how we act when it's just us in the room. And then there's a social structure, and that is the relationship between our community, our cultural community, and the overall society, meaning white society in America. And all of us know we know that we have languages, and what's the word? Languages for both. We can talk one way at home, and another way when we're going to a corporation asking for support over. But have we gotten to where we have been so beaten that we know not to ask for? I mean, here's the example. When I've been in classes where they talk about home ownership, and this example given often was that when a white family applies to get a home loan, a mortgage loan, most of the time they're approved, but they don't take the first approval. They go and get 3 or 4 more. Black people, on the other hand, ask for a loan. They might or might not get it. If they don't get it, they say, well, I knew I wasn't going to get it anyway because I'm Black. Or if they get it, they accept the first offer, even though it's a bad offer, a bad loan, bad money. And they are so happy to get a hearing and a positive that they don't do the work of going to find competitive resources. What's the story from your side, Angel? What do you think?
Man,
from our side.
Great question. It brings up 2 points for me, like code switching and then always waiting for the bottom to kind of drop on us. From the aspect of code switching, that was like the beginning stages of, like, you might show up differently in front of a space that is truly safe amongst allies or folks that look like us, but are acting then completely different but still professional in a more white dominant space. And I have this conversation with business owners all the time, like really be okay and figure out how you're going to move in this ecosystem. And
Angel, let me interrupt you. This is a great, guess what? We're out of time. This is just like that. Listen, I have to stop right now, right here, but we have to come back and finish this conversation. Will you do that with me, Angel,
Great.
Alicia?
Yes,
I'm Al McFarlane. And we'll see you next time. And those who are tuning in online, send us your comments, your thoughts, your questions. We want to hear from you, want you involved. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.